Hello, lovely people. In my video called Foods I Eat to Manage My Autoimmune, I left out some very key things. I forgot some very key things. So this video, I want to kind of fill it in and also just in general address a few items that are occupying my brain here and there. It might be useful, but one of the major things I forgot actually was water. So let's go over water first. I would be very careful with waters in red states. And when I say red states, I don't know why the politics seem to align, but it seems to be far worse. I've lived in New York, I've lived in Oregon, I've visited California. I always had water on tap, and I pretty much in New York for 12 years I had tap water. I had absolutely no issues with the water in New York, never had issues with the water in Oregon. But when I moved to Texas, the water was so bad that after triple filtering it, it was still bad. And I have actually a friend who works for the city, and he was mentioning, I might forget the terminology and the language that he used, but there's a required or a maximum amount of chlorine and other chemicals that they put in the water, and the maximum amount allowed for chlorine, for example, used to be, God, I'm going to butcher it, but I think for the sake of the logic, doesn't really matter the number. Let's say it was 0.2. Now they increased it to 0.5. That's more than double the amount of chlorine that they use in the water in, let's say, Texas. And he was actually mentioning it to me in a way kind of like, it's really bizarre. This is not right. And how can 0.2 be deemed maximum and hazardous, borderlining hazardous? All of a sudden, you're allowing 0.5. And I thought that was a Texas thing. I actually thought that was not just even a Texas thing, rather than that small town thing, because I lived out in the middle of nowhere, right? I was in the woods. So I thought maybe that's just what they're doing over there. And then I moved to Tennessee. My struggles with health just were so bad in Tennessee and in Texas. And then I started realizing that good 75% of my issues have to do with the water. And because I'm already being so insanely careful with my food, how could I keep making mistakes, right? With all the knowledge I have, which happens, definitely happens. But it was just odd that I can't seem to get it under control. In Tennessee, I ended up I tried so many different water options, and I learned a lot about water. Before, I just thought, okay, well, filter it, done, right? Well, not really, because I tried so many different filters, and then I realized, of course, this is probably silly, but not every filter filters everything, every harmful thing out. You have to find a filter that filters that particular harmful thing that's in your water that you want to take out. So the best way is to lab test and see what's in your water, which I have to admit I did not do. But I went through a period of just testing out everything. Then I was like, you know what? Reverse osmosis appears to be the best option. So let me just get reverse osmosis and I'll be fine. I got this very fancy, expensive reverse osmosis system, not the house system, because I lived in an apartment in Tennessee. I basically tried the most expensive pitcher version of reverse osmosis that everybody swears by. Well, the second I tried the water produced by this reverse osmosis, my symptoms just flared. And when that happened, it was very clear that the only thing I had that day and that moment was, the water. And I started digging into the book to see if I find anything like what's going on. And I looked at the book, but there's 6 or so steps of filtration, and on the very last step, it says improves water. How does it improve water? When you dig in, of course, it improves water by putting back minerals. There's a lot of reverse osmosis systems that put back minerals, which means usually magnesium chloride, which is an inorganic compound. So if you have these autoimmune issues with the food, with all these chemicals. Now you're consuming yet another chemical that's being put back in your water. Magnesium chloride is not your magnesium in your banana. It's a chemical. So I got rid of the reverse osmosis. Then I had basically the what I ended up setting up is, it was exhausting, to be honest. It was that Berkey type filter, which goes through charcoal filtration, then fluoride filtration at the bottom. Then I would take that water, because actually there would be some metals that it still wouldn't get rid of. Then I would take that water and run it through this pitcher called Zero Water, which clarifies things even further. It removes just about everything from your water, which is fine if you're eating a balanced, healthy diet and you're getting your minerals from other things. So I wouldn't be worried about drinking the water without minerals. If you're super concerned, just dump a little pinch of Himalayan salt or something. At least you'll have that mineral, but I really don't think it's an issue. That improved my health significantly, and I started going into, remission. But it has been a struggle to find protein, which protein is the next thing that I want to go over, because in my last video, because I've been talking so much about the beef and the lactic acid in beef and the meats and how heavily processed the meats are in US, I forgot to reinstate it in my video so that it doesn't, somebody new coming in, they're going to probably just be like, they should just go straight to frozen items and canned stuff. Like, what about your organic beef and Whole Foods? But hopefully they'll come across my other content. But I definitely continually try to find a source where I can buy beef and meats from. For example, Amos Miller Farm is a farm I mentioned in that video, who has been really fighting with USDA because they refuse to chemically treat their product. And I actually have now purchased some water buffalo. I was thinking that I'm going to have beef, but they didn't have any in stock. So I'm going to have water buffalo and see how that goes. I have to say there's slight nervousness in me. I really hope they didn't open back up because they caved or something to USDA. I really hope that's not the case. After all that fight and all those lawyers, I doubt it. I should do my research. But I'm really excited to try the water buffalo. Another thing about the protein, if you can find a farmer that butchers or slaughters the cows on their property, and they basically don't take it to processing, or they take it to processing afterwards after slaughter. I've encountered a farmer in Texas that said, if you're here on the day of slaughter, we can sell you half of a cow, for example. That ends up working out really well, even though I was moving and I didn't go for it. But it was really good to know that if I'm there on the day of slaughter, before they take to processing, they would be selling me a half of a cow. So you can maybe find a local farmer that can allow this kind of family type of treatment for you. That would be the best, most pure and organic way to actually have your meat. Last but not least, regenerative farming. That language really, really bothers me, to be honest. The marketing language all around regenerative farming is so right out of the Globalist Handbook that the World Economic Forum is who I mean by globalist, by the way. And I don't trust it at all. However, I was sitting there and thinking, it would make sense if in 1990s, there was a push to inject lactic acid into our beef and poultry and meats, and now to just remove it, and just that alone will show such a contrast of health and well-being that people will be like, oh my God, we should follow these people. They know exactly what they're talking about, right? So anyway, with that logic, I decided to contact some regenerative farms to ask how they process their beef. And surprise, surprise, if you watched my last videos on lactic acid and the beef processing and how I was diving into the studies and saying, what the heck, like, hot water wash seems to be the best option for killing the E. coli pathogen that everybody seems to be concerned about, why are we bringing in these deadly bacteria into our food when there's no proof that it does anything for the pathogens? And the woman confirmed. Let me see if I can find that email. By the way, when I say these, I don't think each human participating in these things, they're part of the problem, or they're part of the evil genius plan of doing things. Like, I hope that's not coming across incorrectly. There's WEF and all its corporate members, which is Big Pharma, Bill Gates, and all these other people that have all these plans, but that doesn't mean that a farmer who sees opportunity to switch to better farming techniques, and it clearly works better and it's more healthy and organic, I don't think they're part of the problem. They're part of the club in World Economic Forum, let's say, right? Like, it's just a farm, and they're doing the right thing. I basically asked a lot of questions about the lactic acid, how many days. So my questions were, where does the beef get processed, processing plant and state? Does processing use lactic acid or other antimicrobial chemicals like citric acid, blah, blah. I went over the whole thing. How many days does the beef hang in coolers? How many days is it aged? If acids are used, what percent of each acid is used per gallon of water? So these are all the questions I asked. The answers were the processing plant location, does processing use lactic acid or other chemicals? And the answer is, we used to use an organic citric acid immediately after slaughter to prevent bacteria and fungi. No bleaching or anything else. Now we just wash with warm water and the dry aging process as pathogen intervention. So they, just like everyone else is required, they used to use citric acid, but now they actually just do hot water wash and they age it. So this meat, even aged at this farm, this regenerative farming, will be good to eat, most likely. And I plan to try it, but if they're not using citric acid anymore or lactic acid, if this answer is honest and correct, then I can eat this beef, most likely. And I would be so curious if someone like Mikhaila Peterson could also eat it, because they still age it, but there is no lactic and citric acid. So I hope this is an honest answer, and in which case, when it comes to regenerative farming, at least this one particularly, I should be able to eat. I do plan to contact multiple farms and ask these questions. My prediction would be, again, if I was the evil genius who's doing all this, to put that hat on, anything that's considered regenerative farming, I don't know why that's difficult to say, most likely has reverted to do proper farming. I still do not trust what will happen with mRNA when they start injecting cows, because that's in the works, but it hasn't come yet. I'm very concerned about that, but we will see. At this point, it's not part of it just yet. I did, go back and ask her about the mRNA, and at this point, it's not part of it just yet. Few other miscellaneous things that I want to really address, that I've been meaning to address. One, around the frozen stuff. When I brought frozen things as potential good options, like frozen berries or frozen broccoli and whatnot, still read the label. Because if it says frozen fruits, citric acid, malic acid, then obviously you know that that's not good. And it might sound counterintuitive when I say read the label, but then there's such thing as clean labeling, which they just might not disclose that information. The reason why I still say read the label, because if they're honestly reporting what's in it, then at least you know it's in it. So now you don't have to actually do that much work You can easily skip on that product and only go and inquire about the products that don't seem to list those things, so they may or may not actually have chemicals in the food. So basically it makes your job a little bit easier. But I wanted to address, because I kept thinking, I keep saying read the label, or I read the labels, yet I'm saying don't trust the label. Yes, both are correct, except if there's honest labeling and it does say citric acid, malic acid, now I know for a fact not to waste my time on that. But the one that's clean and doesn't say any of that stuff, now I can, go to this product and ask my questions and see if it's okay to eat. I think that is it for this video. I just wanted to clarify a few things, and I wanted to go over the water, which is such a major thing that we need to look into. And then as a bonus, I'll say that I do eat actually avocados. They seem to do really well. And last but not least, I do love dried fruits if I can be certain that they don't have any additives. All right, that's a wrap for this one.